What Do You Care What Other People Think? By Richard P. Feynman. Picture a tense Washington hearing room on a Tuesday morning in February 1986. Just 2 weeks earlier, the Space Shuttle Challenger had exploded 73 seconds after launch, a national tragedy that played out live on television screens in classrooms across America. Now a presidential commission is scrambling to understand what went wrong. The room buzzes with NASA officials, engineers, and commissioners, generals, astronauts, lawyers. They're shuffling through charts, graphs, and mountains of technical data. The meeting crawls along with all the energy of a DMV waiting room. But one man, a physicist with a glint of mischief in his eyes, seems restless. He keeps glancing at the glass of ice water sitting in front of him. While some official drones on about test protocols and engineering specifications, this man quietly asks for a C-clamp and a small piece of rubber from a model of the rocket joint. With cameras rolling, he clamps the rubber, dunks it into his ice water, and waits. A few minutes pass. Then he pulls it out and calmly addresses the room. He releases the clamp, and the rubber just stays compressed. It doesn't spring back. He holds it up for everyone to see. With that devastatingly simple demonstration, he reveals to the world that at freezing temperatures, the rubber O-rings designed to seal the rocket boosters would fail. He'd just cracked the mystery of the Challenger disaster, not with a supercomputer or complex analysis, but with a glass of ice water and basic physics. That man was Richard P. Feynman, one of the most brilliant and refreshingly unconventional minds of the 20th century. And the book we're diving into today, What Do You Care What Other People Think?, isn't just a collection of entertaining stories, though it certainly is that. It's a window into how Feynman thought, and more importantly, how he lived. It's the sequel to his best-selling memoir, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, but where that book overflowed with pranks and adventures, this one carries something deeper: tragedy, wisdom, and ultimately a profound lesson about integrity. By the time we're done, you'll understand where Feynman's fierce independence came from, why he valued reality over appearances above all else, and how the title of this book became his life's guiding principle, taught to him by the woman he loved most. This isn't just about science. It's about how to live with integrity, curiosity, and courage. So where does a mind like Richard Feynman's come from? The kind that can slice through layers of bureaucracy with a simple demonstration? It doesn't just appear fully formed. It's built, carefully, from childhood. Feynman's first and most important teacher was his father, Mel. Mel wasn't a scientist. He sold uniforms for a living. But he had the soul of a scientist, and he was determined to pass that spirit to his son. Before Richard was even born, his father told his mother, if it's a boy, he's going to be a scientist. The lessons started in a high chair. Mel would bring home little colored bathroom tiles and set them up with young Richard like dominoes. But this wasn't just playtime. Soon they were arranging them in patterns: 2 white tiles, then a blue one, 2 white tiles, another blue. Richard's mother would protest, "Leave the poor child alone. If he wants to put a blue tile, let him put a blue tile." But Mel insisted. "No, I want to show him what patterns are like and how interesting they are." It's a kind of elementary mathematics. His father taught him something profound: the difference between knowing the name of something and actually knowing something. This might be one of the most powerful ideas you'll ever encounter. One day during a walk in the woods, another kid pointed at a bird and challenged Richard. "What kind of bird is that?" Richard admitted he had no idea. The boy scoffed. "It's a brown-throated thrush. Your father doesn't teach you anything." But the opposite was true. Feynman's father had already taught him a much deeper lesson. He would point to a bird and say, "See that bird?" In Italian, it's a chuto la petita. In Portuguese, it's a bom da peda. In Chinese, it's a chung long ta. You can know the name of that bird in every language in the world, but when you're finished, you'll know absolutely nothing about the bird. You'll only know about humans in different places and what they call the bird. So let's look at the bird and see what it's doing. That's what counts. They would watch the bird pecking at its feathers. His father would ask why. Maybe it's straightening them for flight? All right, his father would say. If that's true, they should peck more right after landing. They'd observe together, test the idea, and discover it wasn't quite right. Then his father would explain about lice and mites and the entire hidden ecosystem living on that one small bird. He taught Feynman to observe, to question, and to translate abstract concepts into concrete reality. When they read about a Tyrannosaurus rex being 25 feet tall, his father would say, "That means if he stood in our front yard, his head would be high enough to look through our window on the second floor." This approach, constantly asking, "What does this really mean?" and "How can we check?" became the foundation of Feynman's thinking. One story perfectly captures this. Young Richard noticed that when he pulled his little red wagon, a ball inside rolled toward the back. When he stopped, it rolled forward. He asked his father why. His father's answer is a masterclass in intellectual honesty. He could have simply given him the word, inertia. But he didn't. He said, "That, nobody knows." He explained the principle, that objects in motion tend to stay in motion. He gave it its formal name, inertia, but then repeated, "But nobody knows why it's true." He gave his son both the knowledge and the boundary of that knowledge. He taught him that it's not just okay to say, "I don't know," it's essential. Admitting ignorance is the first step toward discovery. This foundation of relentless curiosity and brutal honesty would shape everything in Feynman's life, especially its greatest love and its deepest tragedy. Her name was Arlene Greenbaum. When Richard first met her, he was a shy, awkward teenager, terrified of appearing like what he called a sissy. Arlene was the most popular girl in school, beautiful, artistic, magnetic. At one party, when someone announced her arrival, everyone jumped up to greet her like she was royalty. Everyone except Richard. He stubbornly stayed planted on the couch, making a point of not following the herd. Arlene noticed. Their connection wasn't just romantic, it was intellectual. He helped her with philosophy homework, dismantling Descartes, famous proof for God's existence, not with arrogance, but with the simple, honest skepticism his father had instilled in him. When her teacher told the class, "There are two sides to every question, just like there are two sides to every piece of paper," Arlene, armed with a lesson from Richard, held up a Mobius strip, a twisted loop with only one continuous side, and delightedly proved him wrong. They fell deeply in love, built on a powerful foundation. They would be completely honest with each other, always. No white lies, no softened truths. This promise would soon be tested in the cruelest way imaginable. Just as Richard started graduate school at Princeton, Arlene developed a lump on her neck. After a series of misdiagnoses, doctors reached a devastating conclusion. They told Richard it was Hodgkin's disease, and it was fatal. She had maybe a few years to live. But then everyone, his parents, her parents, the doctors, insisted on one thing. You can't tell her. They decided to say it was just glandular fever. Richard was trapped. He'd made a sacred promise of absolute honesty, the very foundation of their relationship. But now every authority figure in his life was demanding he lie. The pressure was crushing. His family told him he was being cruel. His little sister, in tears, begged him not to hurt this wonderful girl. And in a moment of weakness, he broke. He agreed to the lie. He went to the hospital, carrying a goodbye letter he'd written, convinced their relationship would end the moment she discovered his betrayal. When Arlene saw him, her face lit up. She said, "Now I know how valuable it is that we tell each other the truth. They're telling me I have glandular fever. Richard, tell me, do I have Hodgkin's disease or glandular fever?" He looked at the woman he loved, and with his heart breaking said, "You have glandular fever." He later said, he died inside. But Arlene was too perceptive. A week later, she called him over. She'd sensed the deception, noticed the theatrical grief from her parents. She confronted him again. "All right, now tell me, do I have glandular fever or Hodgkin's disease?" This time he couldn't do it. "You have Hodgkin's disease," he admitted, reaching for the goodbye letter. Her reaction was stunning. She wasn't angry. She wasn't devastated. She looked at him and said, "God, they must have put you through hell." In the moment he told her she was dying, her first thought was for his suffering. It turned out the doctors were wrong again. A later biopsy revealed it wasn't Hodgkin's disease, it was tuberculosis of the lymphatic glands. Still terribly serious, but not an immediate death sentence. She might have 5, maybe 7 years. Richard's family was horrified when he announced they were getting married. They worried he'd catch the disease. Everyone told him it would be perfectly understandable if he broke his promise, given the circumstances. But for Richard, this wasn't about keeping a promise. It was about love. He said, "Would it be sensible for a husband who learns his wife has tuberculosis to leave her?" They married in a simple ceremony on the way to a charity hospital where she'd be staying. Because of her illness, they knew they could never kiss on the lips. On their wedding day, after the justice of the peace said, "You may kiss the bride," the bashful young physicist gently kissed her on the cheek. Their life together became a testament to Arlene's incredible spirit. While Richard worked on the atomic bomb at Los Alamos, Arlene lived in a hospital in Albuquerque, 100 miles away. But she refused to let illness define her. She filled their lives with playfulness and love, constantly challenging Richard's self-consciousness about appearances. One day, a box of pencils arrived for him at the top-secret lab. They were dark green with gold lettering, "Richard Darling, I love you, Putzie." Mortified, Richard tried scraping the words off. The very next day, a letter arrived from Arlene. "What's the idea of trying to cut the name off the pencils? Aren't you proud of the fact that I love you?" Then came the line that would become both the book's title and his life's theme. "What do you care what other people think?" She was relentless. Once she bought a small charcoal grill and an apron saying, "Barbecue King," insisting Richard cook steaks for them on the hospital lawn, right next to Route 66, the main highway across America. He was mortified at the thought of all those passing cars. Her response was always the same: "What do you care what other people think?" So he did it. Every weekend, this brilliant physicist working on the world's most secret project could be seen grilling steaks beside a public highway, all for the love of a woman teaching him not to take himself too seriously. But her illness progressed. In June 1945, her father called from the hospital. "You'd better come down here right away." Richard borrowed a car and raced to Albuquerque, but a series of flat tires delayed him for agonizing hours. When he finally arrived, Arlene was barely conscious. He sat with her as her breathing grew fainter and fainter, until it finally stopped. His own reaction surprised him. He didn't feel the overwhelming grief he'd expected. He and Arlene had faced the reality of her death for years. As he put it, most people deal with the psychological problem of having maybe 70 or 80 years to live. For them, it was just 5 years. The problem was the same. Only the timescale was different. They'd chosen to live the time they had, not mourn the time they didn't. A month later, walking past a department store, he saw a pretty dress in the window. His immediate thought was, Arlene would like that, and then it hit him. That's when he finally cried. This unwavering commitment to facing reality, no matter how painful, and this playful disregard for conventional expectations, would define the rest of his life. 40 years later, it would be tested on the national stage. In January 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. Days later, Richard Feynman, now a Nobel laureate and world-famous physicist, got a call. They wanted him on the Presidential Commission investigating the disaster. Feynman's first instinct was to refuse. He had a firm principle of staying far from Washington and government bureaucracy. But his wife, Gwyneth, convinced him with brilliant logic. If you don't do it, there will be 12 people all in a group, doing everything together. But if you join, there will be 11 people in a group, while the 12th one runs around all over the place, checking all kinds of unusual things. If something's wrong, you'll find it. He agreed, telling her, "I'm going to commit suicide for 6 months." From the beginning, Feynman's approach was completely different. The commission's early meetings were slow, formal, packed with presentations by NASA's top brass. Feynman was bored and frustrated. This wasn't how you discover things. He wanted to talk to the engineers, the people on the ground who actually built and launched the shuttle. His method was simple. Go to the source. Talk to people who know. Don't just listen to managers. He quickly learned from engineers at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory about a long-standing problem with the rubber O-rings designed to seal the joints of the solid rocket boosters. They were known to fail, especially in cold weather. One evening, Air Force General Kutina, another commission member, called him. Kutina had been working on his car's carburetor, and it got him thinking. "You're a professor," he said. "What exactly is the effect of cold on O-rings?" That was the key. Feynman immediately knew. Cold makes rubber stiff and less resilient. The next day brought another long public hearing. Feynman decided he'd had enough talk. He needed to show them. He went to a hardware store and bought a C-clamp. He got a sample of the O-ring material from a model being passed around. During the hearing, as a NASA manager explained the complex workings of the rocket seals, Feynman quietly asked a waiter for ice water. He clamped a piece of rubber and submerged it. Other commissioners, including General Kutina, watched with anticipation. Kutina, knowing what was coming, coached him with whispered timing. Co-pilot to pilot, not now. Waiting for the perfect moment in the testimony. Finally, the moment arrived. Feynman pressed his microphone button. "I took this rubber from the model and put it in a clamp in ice water for a while," he announced. He lifted the clamp from the glass, held it up, and released it. "I discovered that when you undo the clamp, the rubber doesn't spring back. In other words, there's no resilience in this particular material when it's at a temperature of 32 degrees. I believe that has some significance for our problem." It was pure genius, not because of complexity, but because of simplicity. He'd bypassed all the reports, charts, and jargon, going straight to physical truth. Nature cannot be fooled. But Feynman didn't stop there. He wanted to understand why this had been allowed to happen. He started digging into NASA's culture. What he found was terrifying. A massive disconnect between engineers on the ground and managers at the top. He asked engineers working on the shuttle's main engines to estimate the probability of failure. Their answers clustered around 1 in 200 or 1 in 300. Then he asked their manager the same question. The manager claimed the probability was 1 in 100,000, a difference of more than 300 times. The engineers lived in a world of reality, acutely aware of cracks, vibrations, and constant close calls. Management, Feynman concluded, lived in a world of public relations, where they had to project perfection to secure congressional funding. Bad news from below was suppressed, not through explicit orders, but through an atmosphere where nobody wanted to hear it. This investigation confirmed a lifelong belief. The final sentence of his personal report, which he had to fight to include as an appendix, says it all. For a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations, for nature cannot be fooled. This brings us to the final, perhaps most important part of the book, an epilogue titled The Value of Science. Here, Feynman reflects on the larger meaning of his life's work. He identifies 3 great values in science. The first is obvious. Science gives us knowledge and power to build and create. But he warns this power is like a key that can open heaven's gates or hell's gates. The key itself carries no instructions. The second value is pure intellectual joy, the fun and wonder of discovery. He describes the awe of standing at the seashore, contemplating the universe of atoms making up the waves, and the single atom, himself, able to wonder at it all. A universe of atoms, an atom in the universe. But the third value he believes matters most, and it's a lesson for everyone, not just scientists. It's the wisdom that comes from embracing ignorance, doubt, and uncertainty. Scientists are used to not knowing. They understand all knowledge is uncertain. Scientific knowledge, he writes, is a body of statements of varying degrees of certainty, some most unsure, some nearly sure, but none absolutely certain. This freedom to doubt, he argues, is the engine of progress. It was born from struggle against authority, and it's our responsibility to protect it. Whenever people claim to have all the answers, whenever they suppress criticism and discussion, they're closing the door to discovery. They're trapping us within the limits of our current imagination. So Feynman concludes that science's greatest contribution may be this: it has taught us the value of rational thought and the importance of freedom of thought. It has taught us that it's okay to say, I don't know. More than okay. It's the only way we can ever hope to learn something new. Richard Feynman's What Do You Care What Other People Think is so much more than a memoir. It's a manual for thinking and living. Looking back over these stories, from his father's lessons to Arlene's love to the Challenger investigation, a few core principles shine through with crystal clarity. First is the power of first principles thinking. Feynman's father never let him settle for labels or definitions. He always pushed deeper. What's really happening here? Why does it work that way? This mindset let him see through NASA's bureaucratic fog. While others drowned in reports, he focused on the fundamental physics of a piece of rubber. The lesson is profound. When facing complex problems, resist the urge to rely on conventional wisdom. Break the problem down to its most basic truths and reason up from there. The second powerful lesson is about the non-negotiable importance of integrity. The story of his lie to Arlene is one of the most painfully honest things I've ever encountered. It haunted him. It showed him that even well-intentioned lies can corrode the foundation of trust. That experience forged in him a fierce commitment to truth, which we see again in his fight over the Commission's report. He refused to sign his name to feel-good statements unsupported by evidence. He knew small compromises of integrity lead to bigger ones, until you end up with a culture where a 1 in 100 risk is presented as a 1 in 100,000 fantasy. Finally, there's the beautiful, liberating idea of embracing doubt. In a world that rewards having the right answer, Feynman reminds us that the greatest minds are comfortable with not knowing. His father's simple admission, that nobody knows, about inertia, was a gift. It taught him that the edge of knowledge isn't a wall but a frontier, a place of excitement and adventure. For anyone starting out in life, this might be the most important lesson of all. Don't be afraid to say I don't know. Don't be afraid to question what you're told. Your doubt isn't weakness, it's the engine of your growth. So how can you start living a little more like Feynman today? Here are a few simple ideas. First, next time you learn a new fact, don't just memorize it. Ask yourself, how do we know this is true? Follow the trail of evidence, even briefly. It changes how you learn. Second, practice intellectual honesty in small ways. Next time you're in a conversation and don't understand something, resist the urge to nod along. Have the courage to say, I'm sorry, I don't follow. Could you explain that again? It's a small act, but it builds a powerful habit. And third, find joy in the unknown. Let yourself be curious. As Feynman said, there's pleasure in finding things out. Pick something you're curious about, anything at all, and spend an hour exploring it. Not for grades or goals, but for pure fun. That's our journey through What Do You Care What Other People Think by Richard P. Feynman. We've explored some of the most powerful stories and ideas from this remarkable book, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. The map shows you landmarks, but it can never replace walking the trails yourself. The real magic of this book is in Feynman's voice, the way he tells these stories with such honesty, humor, and heart. If any of these ideas sparked something in you, a flicker of curiosity, a desire for a more honest way of living, I genuinely encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning. It's about spending time with one of the most brilliant and authentic minds of our time, and it might just change how you see the world. And of course, if you found this summary valuable and want to keep exploring the ideas that shaped the world's greatest minds, please take a moment to subscribe, and maybe share this with someone who might find it meaningful. Let's keep learning and growing together.